Greetings. My name is Anthony Barbera, and I'd like to welcome you to the Jonah Chronicles. If you've ever thought about Jonah, your first thought may have been a whale, or a man swallowed by a whale. That's because the story of Jonah is written in the Bible, the Talmud, children's stories, and is available within libraries the world over. You may have even read a book about Jonah growing up. However, if you thought the story of Jonah concerned only a man and a whale, you'd be missing out on one of the most exhilarating and thrilling adventures in all of human history. The rest of the story of Jonah is equally impactful and spiritually revealing. If you assume that Jonah is a fable or a myth, you'd be mistaken. The story of Jonah goes far beyond myth and is truly about a man who actually lived in a specific place during a critical time in history. Jonah was asked by God to perform a very difficult and frightening task. He was commanded to go to Nineveh, the most wicked and violent city on the face of the earth. He was asked to declare the Lord's message to the people of that immense and evil city. The book of Jonah is a true story, and it's full of miracles. It's also a clear and unmistakable display of God's love for all mankind. Biblically and historically, the entire population of the city of Nineveh, including the king, the queen, and all the people, repented of their violent and wicked ways and turned to the God of Israel. In this series, the Jonah Chronicles, I will be examining with you three basic areas of interest: the biblical and Hebrew records, the historic aspects, documents from other countries, art, maps, as well as related literature of the times, and the creative aspects, along with some of my decision-making during the writing of my novel, Jonah-In the Time of the Kings. You see, I've come to realize that Jonah was a bit like you and I. When that man, or prophet as he is rightfully known, refused to obey God, he and God got into a bit of a quarrel. Not a good idea to be at variance with the Almighty, and that is where the fish came in. I'd like to take you on a journey. It will be a journey back into time a little over 2,600 years ago. We'll see what my friend Jonah was really up against, where he lived, his faith in the Almighty Sovereign God, and perhaps we'll recognize a little of ourselves in Jonah. Join me now as we journey back and preview the Jonah Chronicles. Jonah was a prophet of the Lord in northern Israel during the years 785 to 750 BC, and perhaps beyond. Jonah, the son of Amittai, was from a small township called Gath-Hepher, in the area of Zebulun, not far from the border with Issachar, and not far from Nazareth, where Jesus was born. Jonah is referred to in 1 Kings as Jonah, the son of Amittai. His Hebrew name Jonah means dove, and his father's name Amittai means faithful. By the time of Jonah, the kingdom of Israel had already been divided for almost 150 years. So in this context, when we refer to Israel, we are referring to the north only: Israel in the north and Judah in the south. There were, practically speaking, three prominent kings that we will look at in the time of Jonah: King Jeroboam II of Israel, King Ashurdan II of Assyria, and to a lesser extent, King Ben-Hadad III of Syria. The events of Jonah occur in the days of Jeroboam II. Jeroboam II was the 14th king of the ancient kingdom of Israel, over which he ruled for 41 years from 793 to 753 BC. This is many generations after the reigns of King David and King Solomon. In spite of the evil he enacted, as did all the kings of the north before and after Jeroboam, under his leadership, Israel reached its greatest geographical extent, as well as the height of its economic and military power. Jeroboam II expanded Israel to the limits indicated during the reign of Solomon. Regrettably, Israel was sinking into deep spiritual and moral decay. Encouraged and systematized by Jeroboam II, as well as the kings who came before him. Despite its economic and military power, the glory of Israel was fleeting and only an illusion. soon to be shattered by Israel's greatest enemy from the north, Assyria, the home of that great and wicked city of Nineveh. Concurrently, as Israel rebelled against their God and sank deeper into the spiritual and social decay of idolatry, their enemy Assyria was arising in power. As we begin the book of Jonah, the Lord asked Jonah to travel to Nineveh. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. But Jonah rose to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and he went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish. Certainly this is the part of the story of Jonah of which most people are familiar. Next, according to the Hebrew text, the Lord sent a great tempest across the face of the ocean, causing the ship to tear apart at the seams. Hoping to save the ship from destruction, and at Jonah's suggestion, and after much consternation, the sailors tossed Jonah overboard. And so then Jonah was swallowed by a great whale. Actually, the Hebrew text does not state that Jonah was swallowed by a whale at all, but that the Lord had prepared a great fish. It could have been a whale, but we don't know that for sure. The Lord chose not to give that exact information to us. In my novel, Jonah-In the Time of the Kings, I do use a sperm whale to rescue Jonah. One of the reasons I chose a sperm whale is the great depths to which it can dive. By the way, the sperm whale's favorite dinner is giant squid, which in many cases grows to the size of a man and lives often a mile below the surface of the ocean. Jonah, after being vomited back into the surf, the text does not say exactly where, is once again told to go to Nineveh and to declare the message of the Lord to the Ninevites. This time he obeys. Nothing like a little encouragement. Now, the enemy of almost every country during this period is Assyria. The king of Assyria from 773 to 755 BC, in my opinion, was Ashur-dan III. He is the most likely king to have been ruler of Nineveh at the time of Jonah. Ashur-dan's reign was a difficult age for the Assyrian monarchy, shadowed by rebellions and epidemics of plague. The ancient city of Nineveh, to where Jonah was sent, is situated just outside present-day Mosul, on the east bank of the river Tigris in Iraq, over 500 miles from Jonah's home in Gath-Hepher. As the book of Jonah unfolds, Israel is weakening as a result of idol worship. Assyria is finalizing the most efficient military, financial, and administrative system the world has yet seen, and the principal business of the nation of Assyria is war. The greatest war machine of its time is a terror to its neighbors. Its wealth and prosperity are sustained by slavery and booty. A semi-military bureaucracy carries out the functions of government at home, and in the conquered regions sets a precedent and a pattern for imperial control over far-flung provincial territories. You might ask why I chose 762 as the year to set my novel, Jonah-In the Time of the Kings. Two very important documented events took place at that time. First, a solar eclipse occurred on June 15, 763 BC. Also known as the eclipse of Barbera, it is the earliest identifiable solar eclipse mentioned in historical sources. Historical eclipses are a valuable resource for historians. They allow other historical events to be dated precisely. Secondly, according to an Assyrian canon, in 765 BC, Assyria was hit by a plague, and the following year the king could not campaign. It was customary for the Assyrian king to lead a military expedition every year. To understand or even to appreciate the decisions which Jonah made and perhaps why he made them, it is important to understand his circumstances. He was already working with the Lord throughout Israel. His job was to warn, to preach, and otherwise to teach Israel, as the Lord instructed him to do so, to reconcile the people of Israel back to their God. They had strayed remarkably far from their God. They were to remind the people, as well as the king, that their course of affairs would finally result in their complete destruction and loss of sovereignty. And then the Lord spoke to Jonah, sending him to the world's most wicked city and violent country, Assyria. city that Jonah is asked to enter is Nineveh, its largest city and well over 500 miles as the crow flies from his home in Gath-Hepher, and even farther from Joppa, where the great fish most likely dropped him off after his ride. The army of Nineveh is Israel's enemy, a systematized war machine crushing every city in its path, enslaving every nation it conquers. Assyria lives by slavery and conquest. Israel is next in its path. Jonah is personally asked by God to deliver God's message to the people of Nineveh. In essence, God says, "Your violence is in my face. If you don't turn from your wickedness, I will destroy your great city of Nineveh and all of you in it." And yet, apparently, because he was on such intimate terms with God, Jonah decided he knew better than God. He believed that if he preached God's message to the Ninevites, God might repent and let them live. Jonah wished them all to be destroyed. They were wicked beyond belief and Israel's greatest threat. So as Jonah decides he knows better than God, and Israel turns away from God to worship the idols of the pagans, the appearance and trappings of prosperity and wealth are everywhere within Israel. Be that as it may, behind the illusion, the nation is filled with political dishonesty, bribery, and intrigue at the highest levels. The rich proclaim their promise to help the poor, while they fitfully use them. With good words and fair speeches, they deceive the hearts of the simple, and Jonah reasons that if the Ninevites are allowed to live by way of his preaching, then they may very well overrun all of Israel and enslave all of his people. As Jonah walks into that terrifying city of Nineveh, he preaches what the Lord has asked him to speak. In 40 more days, Nineveh will be overthrown. Journey with me as we see how Jonah answers God's call, and how God's love for all mankind is made manifest through the life of Jonah. Join me for the Jonah Chronicles.